What is up, everybody? This is Tikwe, also known as Richard, and I'm coming back to you with another casted game playing as the Chinese. And today we're going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to title this message as the top 10 mistakes every new Age of Empires 4 player makes. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is I played against the English here as the Chinese, and just a quick idea behind this and what my focus is for season 4. Obviously, Age of Empires 4 has done really well in marketing the game with the launch and the 25-year anniversary and the Red Bull Wololo. There's a lot brand new Age of Empires 4 players out there, and I want to focus on helping you guys more than climbing the ranks and all of that. Yes, that's one side of things, but there's some fundamentals we need to get down first before we start progressing into ranked. I haven't even touched ranked this season because I want to focus on Chinese specifically for this season. Obviously play other civilizations here and there in team games and so on, but my main tip for this season, I think it's going to be Chinese, right? Now, the first big mistake I find a lot of new players making in Age of Empires 4 is the fact that your training start needs keybinds. It's very simple to get your villagers out where they need to be, but just as a standard, I like going for my scout on keybind 1. So there's my scout. If you press H, that's your town center, keybind 2. And specifically to Imperial officials and Chinese, I would keybind that to 3. So I can micro my base no matter where I am on the map. Even if I stay here on the ponds, which you can't see, that's what you see in the start. I'm scouting, right? While we're busy scouting and everything, I can focus on my Imperial official, focus on my town center, get villager production out, and focus on my scouting to make sure I'm doing good scouting. So that's the first big mistake I see a lot of players make in Age of Empires 4. The second big mistake that I see Age of Empires 4 players, and we'll focus on that while we go through this. Let's hop over to our enemy here who's playing the English. With your scout pathing, you want to make sure you don't leave little gaps here, and I'll show you why. Your sheep sometimes sits all the way here on the edge of the map, some maps more so than others. You want to make sure you don't leave any gaps on the side like this. Get your scouting down. And also when you are scouting, if we go over to my side quickly, you can see I'm doing a little bit of I get more scouting done with the Chinese because they have a bigger scouting radius, as what you can see the circles look like for the English. That's one of their dynasty bonuses that they get. But you also want to kind of not just run in a straight line, but kind of zigzag down to the side. And when you rally point, I'm not sure if he actually rallied his scout out. Let's just have a look. He's also actively working with the scout. There's no rally marks that you can see, but when you rally out with your scout, the sad part is you get these little corners, stop and turns, and you have a tendency to miss. So what I tend to do, just as an alternative, is to jump between your scout. You can do that. I have a keybind specifically for my scout because it's such a big part of the game. You can see he's already on 11 sheep. And I am currently on 7 sheep, and we're going to pick up a few more as we go back to the base. But the main thing I wanted to know was, is he going for a farm transition? That's why early fog of war, you can see I actually did scout him out, and we wanted, sorry, there we go, that's the fog of war. I wanted to know if he's going to go for a mill early start, going for early academy, archer academy, or whatever the landmark. I saw Imperial Academy's stuck on that landmark. You don't need to know the landmark's name. And another last point on the scouts is that you don't scout the back of your base. When you scout the back of your base, there's always some sheep that you can pick up right there. Okay. Now, mistake number 3 is choosing the wrong landmark. And the reason why I'm saying that, and also not starting it soon enough. A lot of players think, you know, like Ozzy Drongo said once, you know, when you age up, what are you gaining? If you can't gain anything from that age up, you know, then why age up? So we'll focus on tip number 3, how many villagers to use on landmarks. So let's have a quick look on his side. Perfect, he's going for 5, and he's building an Abbey of the Kings. Now, Abbey of the Kings, why are you building an Abbey of the Kings if you don't have any units out? Because the units need to heal from the Abbey of the Kings, because the Abbey of the Kings heal nearby friendly units that are out of combat for 6 every 1 second. Pretty nice heal. But that's also not good if you have that landmark and you don't have any units, right? In my case, I went with 1 villager on the Imperial Academy because we build a little bit faster, so it's basically 2 villagers. I don't need to age up extremely fast. And just again, from the scouting perspective, I see the Abbey of the Kings. I just scouted it, so with that in mind, you'll see me react in a certain way. But with your landmarks, you don't want to go with 10 villagers on the landmarks, because the time that it takes to build the landmark, you are losing the resources while busy building it. With an outpost, if you are getting rushed or you're expecting something to happen and you need some defense, that is a good thing in my mind, like outpost or a keep, that is fine. But necessarily with landmarks, 2 to 3, maybe 5 villagers is a good ballpark figure. Like with Holy Roman Empire, if you go for 6, because they get that you know, inspiration buff, that is good. But he gets 0 benefit from this because there's no units out here, and that's why you can see also I'm leaving my scout right here so I can see what's actually happening. And you can see he just harasses a little bit with the scout while we get the Barbican of the Sun up. Now this is quite late for China. You can get your timings right, and I'll make that tip number 4, is the fact that you can get your timings better. And the easiest way to do that is jump into custom games over and over, maybe 3 or 4 games in a row, and just practice the build orders that you guys see online specific to your faction, and just kind of understand the fundamentals of that faction in the beginning so it makes sense for you. The reason why I'm saying that is if you are aging up at 6 minutes as the Rus or Abbasid Dynasty or Delhi, you'll suddenly find there's a knight in your base, and a knight's gonna 1-shot or 2-shot your villagers, and you're gonna be behind on villagers. So that's one thing to take into consideration. Now, we are still scouting out the enemies, trying to figure out what is his plan, trying to figure out. I don't think this player is too experienced in the game, but he knows the basics. He is progressing the villagers. There was very, very low idle time numbers on his game afterwards. And is actually going for a second town center. So that is some good things happening, but he actually decided to go for very heavy walls. So that's another thing. Just a last note on the age up times. Don't religiously believe in a single build order. You can get outposts rushed in the Dark Age. You can get all in by someone in the Feudal Age. They never go castle, so you're still building a second town center, and suddenly you find there's 20 or 30 units in your base, and even though they can't kill you immediately with your defenses, they are just going to make you idle on, and you're going to eventually lose the game. Okay, so tip number 5 would be on wasted resources. If you are going to decide to build walls, and it's not just a silly stone wall, I mean, stone walls are really, really good as a Chinese player, especially if your enemy decides to build them, because then you don't have to invest any of that resources early on. I have a scout in his base. I know exactly what's going on. I know there's nothing that's going to happen from this, so I can get some few units out just to harass on my own before this wall goes up. And I mean, we don't even know about the walls yet, just for perspective's sake. We are lucky, but we do send the horseman through here. You can see he sees the horseman coming, so the scout was following. But now we see there's a wall going up, so we are kind of reacting to that, and I'm keybinding my units to keybind 4. But my point is, on the walls, This is a lot of resources. I think this is about 330 or 350 stone for this wall. There's a second one here. There's a third one here. So if we look at the stone gathering, there's 300 left, 350 left. So that's 3 or 4 town centers that you could have had up. You know, if you just saved onto that, or a nice little defensive keep. So why do you want to go this defensive if this is kind of what you wanted to avoid, to get raided early? What is the point of that? I just idled out 17 villagers right here, and we actually did kill one. There's another one that's dead right there, and now we're on here. And what this is forcing you to do is actually react. So I forced him to go for a barracks, I forced him to go for a spearman, I forced him to get off wood, and that was 4 horsemen that is right here, and I'm just picking up villagers right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably a 7th villager is going to go down here. So that's 7 villagers that just died, and that was because of the wasted resources going into there's another villager that's going to go here by another horseman, and now we can, you know, apply some pressure. So what happens right now, this is quite a very familiar feeling even for me. You're so focused on getting certain things done, you're watching your resources, you're going for a second town center, and just before you reach that landmark, you have units inside your base, and now you have to change your whole strategy. You feel anxiety, you're stressed because you're not sure how aggressive is it going to be. You're busy training out units, there's more units queued. You have to micro your villagers. Some of your villagers are standing still, you run out of food suddenly on your berries. It just becomes a mess. The way I find that point of wasted resources, I mean, losing 7 villagers is wasted resources. That means these horsemen paid for themselves 100%. Even if I lose these horsemen, the idle time that they caused, the units that they had to train, the barracks that they had to train, they paid themselves back twofold, okay? So you have to kind of decide early on what type of player you want to be. I mean, this is also wasted resources from my side. You can see this villager is probably going to go down to this little wolf, and I missed it because I'm focusing on you know, other factors. I'm focusing on villager production and focusing on raiding with these units, and at the same time, if I'm not checking in with my base, suddenly you can run out of food and then end up you know, worse off than when you started. So make sure you know your faction's advantages. So specifically for the Chinese, just to pause here, I want to show you guys something else. So wasted resources on that topic, if I don't supervise a mill or anything like that, they get 20% more drop off by supervising these buildings. That's this little supervision right here, and while you're supervising you get increased training time. It takes me 10 seconds to train survival techniques. If you go check for the enemy, that same upgrade, right, it's 25 seconds. Horticulture is 45 seconds, whereas for us that upgrade is virtually free, and virtually like 2 or 3 seconds. I'm over exaggerating, but you get the point, right? So make sure you know your faction advantages. For the English, it's definitely farms. You want to go early on farms. Their farms are even cheaper. So when you train farms with your villagers, you can't actually see it. That's interesting because it's probably from my perspective. I don't know. Usually when you click on the villager, you can kind of see the buildings that they want to build. But anyway, besides the point is know your faction advantages so that you can actually use those advantages. I know he went for a very aggressive wall, so we just decided to go for 1, 2, and probably a 3rd town center is going to come up right now, because as China, we have Song Dynasty, we train extra units with the Dynasty, and that allows us to just, you know, snowball our economy as fast as possible and play the game at our tempo, because that's more comfortable. You also want to look at little areas. We'll make that a point number 6. is that when you're playing with your different factions, there's going to be influential areas. The mill has a little orange ring around it that allows you to build farms in that area. Your town center has a ring on the outside that is your attack ring. You don't want to build too far out of that or expand too far out of that too soon, because you know, when you're expanding too far, you leave yourself susceptible to raids like what happened here on the deer. He didn't have any defenses up. On the woodlands, there was no units, and that's a good rule of thumb, is don't go into Castle Age bare. But I want to specifically make point of your areas of influence. So Imperial Academy has this area of influence that makes my buildings generate 100% extra tax gold from being in this area. So certain buildings like your unit production buildings can generate tax, villages can't, town centers can't, granaries, mills, lumber camp, mining camp, those type of buildings can actually generate income. So you want to make sure you build your base in a certain way and prioritize where those areas of influence is. You can even see my clockwork tower is generating gold because it's in this area of influence. If you take, for argument's sake, the Rus, they have a little fortress that they can build, which is their outposts, and those outposts is very important because you get extra lumber from your lumber camps, and you know that really works very well into their hand. Another last thing with regards to the buildings, kind of to have a plan of where you want to go. So you can see there's a granary out here, there's a wood line right here, so I'm kind of a little bit strapped for space. You can see the ring here on the granary. That's the square of the Imperial Academy. Holy Roman Empire also has a similar square, which allows them to have emergency repairs. Also, you don't want to build your mining camps like against the corners of the resource. You want to have it square like this, because the walking distance to drop off is quicker, which means your resources will be a little bit faster. It's those little small placement things that will make a big difference in your playstyle. Now you can see we're going for a monastery. The monastery is within the influence. I would argue that this monastery on the corner right here would have been better, because then I could have trained military buildings there and spaced it out better. But that's a very big point to take into consideration, and every single faction has some form of area of effect thing that you need to take into consideration. You can see all three granaries I'm placing on those affected areas so that I can get you know, that extra gold from the resources that's being dropped off to it. Now we see a town center, and this is point number 6. You saw that we killed the enemy scout early on. You want to deny your enemy as much as possible scouting information on your base. Some players can just all in blind you, that's okay, but you want to make sure that you actually have some form of vision going up. You can see I'm building outposts to see what's going on behind the walls. So right now I can't see over the wall. Right now I can't see what's going on here. We don't know about this wall yet, but we are building outposts so we can actually see what's going on. Players tend to wall and then use the wall to open up and attack from that side. So you want to make sure you have vision on your side so you can see what's happening. This wall is perfect for me, is as safe as it can be, because there's no gate right here. So that means everything this side is safe. I can keep expanding this side because there's no wall here, so I know I can play into this corner, because he's not gonna suddenly just come through this wall, and if he puts down a gate I will actually know what's coming, because the units will probably move into position as well. So that's why we are actually getting some units out. Now I suddenly see, okay, there's 2 stone walls this side. Now you actually have to start asking yourself the question, okay, you know, if I'm seeing this, what is with the information I'm getting, what's actually happening. If I'm walling this defensive, there's probably some form of trading that's planning on happening soon. And right there you can see traders already starting to move out, so definitely that's the case. So you'll start learning what different scenarios in the game means, right? If I saw a different landmark and I saw a blacksmith and those type of things, I knew he was going for a very aggressive early style, and that's important to take into consideration. Kill enemy scouts if you can around your base, get an outpost up, especially into the castle age, so you can have vision and map control. That's very important. Just a single outpost can give you control on the resource and make them rather consider moving in a different direction, so that's also important. The next point I want to make is regards to relics. Even though relics has been nerfed recently, in the castle age, if the game tempo is not all in, or you are defending on 5 or 6 different fronts, you have to train units like a madman. Your main priority is vision, map control, and relics. So you want to go for relics early on, which a lot of players in the beginning don't do. And also you want to make sure that your upgrades are starting to come in. You don't want to go into Castle Age, especially with the new season, without some of your upgrades, like the double broad axe for the wood, your horticulture for your farms. You know, use precision cross breeding for the farms. That's Imperial Age. You want to make sure that some of your military upgrades are coming through. This specific game, you can see I have no blacksmith, but I am starting to train units. We are in both the castle age, but I kind of saw what enough to know where his resources are being invested. So that's why I am not too focused on, you know, pushing the enemy right now. You can see all those spearmen he invested because we raided with the horses. He was probably expecting more to happen, but he's in the castle age, and you know, there's still the archer upgrade that needs to come through. There is the greased axles, very important one. He's focusing on the hunts, so a survival technique would have been a great upgrade. Long distance chopping like this, not good. You can see he's actually gathering relics, which is great. He is focused on all of the hunts, so he's not transitioning into farms, only doing that right now. And that leaves him vulnerable because the resources are being gathered at a slower tempo. Okay, so point number 7 is going to be on your villagers. At 20 minutes, you want to be able to max out your population, unless it's severe games where you guys are consistently fighting, you know, and it's like a make or break where you're about to lose the game or win the game. It's a different scenario. Most cases, when you are starting to reach the 20-minute mark, you can expect very heavy upgrades, very high economies, imperial ages for certain factions, and you want to make sure you have production buildings. You want to make sure you have at least one of each, so you can complement your army with a variety of units, not just a one unit, because it's easy to counter one unit with another unit, especially if you invest everything into those units, those upgrades, and then he counters you and then you have nothing to stand on. So make sure when you transition into your villagers at around 20 minutes or even 13 to 14 minutes, you want to be on very high villager counts. You can see I decided to go for insane amount of villagers. I don't think you can see worker kills. We've killed 15 workers on his side, but we're sitting on a population of 176 with 17 military, so it's about 130 villagers. I mean, that's insane. I don't have any pressure right now, so I don't have a problem with stacking up resources, because I know you know, it's very easy to take any extra resources and just get rid of it. And the plan was like right here, you saw those villagers right there. I killed them because they just finished the stone, so we invested all of our stone, and you'll see I'll get rid of any villagers that starts idling right now. So now we're going for the Spirit Way landmark and transitioning into the Imperial Age. We have our upgrades done. and our units anywhere that they finish, like right here, idle units, those idle units can just be deleted because I know I'm very high on the unit count, right? You want to be able to at least have a army of 60 to 80 units. That is a comfortable place to be at. You don't want to go too high onto villagers, but you want to at least, I mean, this is a waste. I could have done this with a lot less villagers, but I have the resources to do all of this, and I just wanted to get these buildings up as soon as possible, and right there I just deleted more villagers. So a comfortable number for me, if we just switch over right here, you'll see he's on 44 on wood. I would like to ask why you are that heavy on wood. In these type of games you can get away, especially with the upgrades, with about 20, 30 to 45 on food depending on your civilization, and especially early on you want to have at least 35 to 40 on gold if you don't have any additional sources of gold, which would be like relics or you know, my imperial officials and those type of things, right? Just before this fight, let's just do a next point number 8 is all inning with your army. So what I did before we started this fight, I selected all my units, right? I also have the Imperial Palace. I used the Imperial Palace so I can exactly see where all their villagers are, but you have scout information, you have some idea of what's happening. I know there's trading happening. So when coming in here, I can kind of get an idea of what's going to happen. Also, with this specific landmark, you can see it extends my vision all the way to the front here, and I actually saw him build up these buildings because he started doing that when I started breaching here. So I know if you are starting to build military buildings as the fight begins, you are probably behind in units and you are crapping yourself because of it. You can see all the upgrades coming in from his side because he is Imperial Age. He did get the Weingard Palace, which is the elite. Oh, that's actually on my side. Sorry, elite palace guards. We are getting. I apologize. That's actually on my side. Look at all these upgrades coming in. Holy smokes! You want to make sure as the fight starts, focus on the point. Is you can select everything, right? And I can control click certain units to select those units themselves, right? You want to go into this type of fight with the right unit selected, because you can, for argument's sake, let's say I take crossbows. This is their team, and let's use the spearmen as an example, that they are the tanks, right? They are, in this case, the tanks. Otherwise, it's going to be men-at-arms or horsemen or lancers or knights, right? That's going to be on the front line. You can shift-click these units and make sure that your crossbowmen are actually focusing those down. You can keybind them to 4. You can see if I keybind everything to 4, that's everything. Now I actually just want my clockwork trebuchets to be 4. I make them 4. Everything else is not 4. Keybind 4 anymore. I see these villagers. I can keep everything selected, press shift and click them, and they will actually be deselected from the team. Now I press 4, and now I can just double click a clockwork trebuchet and make them keybind 5. Villagers I can just move, or if I want to do anything with them, I can control click them and move them out of the fight, right? So that's very important for a fight like this, because you want to focus certain units down before those units get to your counter units. So in this case, spearmen will counter the horsemen, the knights. Longbowmen will counter spearmen, but I don't have any. You know, he has some crossbowmen, so that will counter my lancers, and he has springalds which can counter my siege. He built them because I was sieging him down, which is a good call. So that's very important to take into consideration your keybinds when you're moving in with your army. You can even select the whole army, right? Keybind 4, and then take the men-at-arms. Okay, let's do that again. Keybind 4, men-at-arms, keybind 5, right? Crossbowmen, keybind 6. So I'm selecting, if I select 5 or 6, I'm just selecting those group of units. If I want to move everything, I just press 4. So 4 is a whole army, 5 is my men-at-arms, palace guards, 6 is my crossbowmen. So I can, before we go into a fight, just kind of have a practice a natural keybind selection for yourself, so you can know where to. 3 walls coming in. Holy smokes, that's a lot of walls, you know, in this game. We just take a little screenshot of this, you know, to kind of simulate this. That's actually crazy. You know, what's going to be a better defense? 2 keeps in an outpost or 3 stone walls? I guess 3 stone walls, right? Yeah, that's crazy. Please don't do this. This is, you can just do a little chop through on the side here, and you know, then you're already in trouble again. Okay, point number 9. When fighting, don't just all in your army. You know, choose what the most sufficient strategy for you is going to be. If I ran in here and he has a bunch of spearmen and I have a bunch of knights, I'd much rather use the knights and run to his backline and go harass the villagers. I can probably hold this with a few crossbowmen and spearmen, right? So you can see he's just losing his whole army right now. He didn't move this army once. I know he has to kind of defend this position, but I would much rather have moved this army back and kind of tried to rally more units before I took this fight, because that could have ended better instead of all-inning when you know that, you know, the enemy is coming with heavy units and you haven't even gotten your upgrades through, right? You want to make sure that your army is not being wasted. A thing that I used to do is Holy Roman Empire. I used to men-at-arm rush, especially in the Castle Age. Then you get into the enemy's base and you stand with men-at-arms, which has extra armor, and you just run them underneath the enemy town center, and you're standing here sieging the town center down, but then the town center with the garrison villagers ends up killing your men-at-arms. So you maybe got a few villagers, but he got, let's say you have 10 men-at-arms, that's 1,000, it's 1,000 food. No, it's more. No, it's 1,000 food, sorry, 1,000 food, and 200 gold that he got from that. That is huge. That's 2,000 food, 1,000 food here, 1,000 food there. You're very quickly going to run out of resources in certain places. So, you know, you're sacrificing something for something. So the trebuchets are back here. They're dealing with this units, and you can actually see my trebuchets. I shift-clicked the building, so I want to focus the same building so they get through them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then all the way down to the Weingard Palace, so that he cannot use those buildings, and I'm pushing forward with the army, right? And then you can see we're opening up right here, getting through the middle for the sacred sites, but units are also being trained in the back. While we're on this topic of the units, when you're on your military buildings, if you press F2 for most people, you will be able to select all of your military buildings. I like binding them to 7 so I can rally them out. You can just leave it at F2 if that's convenient for you, but it will also bind docks, so you can shift click certain buildings you don't want in there, so you don't have to tab through these buildings. Let's say there's a dock and a monastery, and a palace of some military producing buildings, like landmarks. You can see there's the landmark. If I build astronomical, let's say I have 5 siege workshops, if I press F2, the siege workshops and the astronomical clock tower are going to be separate. So now I have to tab 5 times instead of once to get to that building. So I'd rather press remove the astronomical clock tower and bind this to 7, put a rally point out, and then if I need specifically the astronomical clock tower, I can just click it to train those specific units. Just take that into mind when you are dealing with all your different military camps, right? Then the last tip that I have for new players would be to focus on winning. Some players play for the sake of you know, kind of having a mutual understanding that, you know, we're going to play until Imperial Age, or you don't want to harass because you don't like being harassed, or stuff like that. You know, you have to understand that you're stepping into a war scenario with the sake of winning the war, right? Because we are Chinese at war with English right now, and we are using resources, units, and ages to age up and use advantages in that faction to beat this faction, right? In team games it's a little different. You can play a support role. Actually, I'll show you guys how to do that in the future. But in this type of scenario, I know he was going to go walls. I saw all the heavy walls coming in. I put some defenses down, and I used the advantage of the Chinese economy to push heavy units very quickly into the Imperial Age and harass him, right? If I left Imperial Age for 5 or 6 minutes, that means he's going to use this. You can see 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 resources that he's floating, and he's probably going to make an army, and he's probably going to get the upgrades, and he's probably going to get the blacksmith upgrades, and then this is going to be a lot more difficult to get right? If you are good at rushing early and you like that playstyle, rush early. Don't give him chance to breathe. Put an outpost down. Force him to spend resources like we did with the barracks and the spearmen. Force him to think outside of what his normal playstyle would be, because that will allow you to play the game you want to play. If it's slow, if it's fast, if it's rushing, if it's ram rushing, you know, you can't win every single game. You will lose some games, but if you find a playstyle that you like, you can hone that skill. And then the bonus step that I have is some factions have really high power spikes in certain ages. Start learning those power spikes. You don't want to fight against English in Imperial Age, late Imperial Age, when they have their upgrades. It's virtually impossible to get through their army. Same with Chinese. You don't want them to get all their dynasties and all their dynasty units. We have Chukunu right now. We get advantages from the Chukunu, but because we have the Spirit Way, our Chukunu, every single Chukunu that dies heals when they die, because of that specific unique unit advantage, and they also get increased attack speed because of it. The Spirit Way also gives me cheaper upgrades. The French, if they get to Castle Age without any harassment, the Knights gets very cheap upgrades, and their army gets really quick at getting those certain upgrades, and they get a lot of cheaper upgrades. So you want to harass the French if you can, just to force them to invest resources other than getting the upgrades. So let me know if there's any other tips that you guys think it's worth mentioning, but I think this was a really good game to kind of showcase those points in play. You can see the resources being gathered all of the time, idle villages being controlled all of the time. We do have 7 and 8 on both sides. Actually ended up on the same villager count right here, but you want to make sure that you push your advantage and don't let off the steam when you are pushing in. Don't just kill 1 or 2 buildings when you killed his whole army just now. If you kill this whole army, push for villagers. If you killed you know, a landmark, then make sure that you secure an outpost or something on that landmark, just to make sure that it's more difficult for him to repair or rebuild those landmarks if it's needed. But you can see now how easy we are pushing into his base. We isolated the trade now. We are picking up villagers. He's trying to get military production up again, but it's a little too late to get all of this up, and he decides to tap out, and it's GG. But thank you very much for watching, guys. Please give me your feedback of what you like as well.